Pitter patter, let's get at her. It is another episode of the Manely Broncos Podcast, and we are excited because we are 1 week away from NFL free agency. We're starting to get some news. We had the mini, if you will, general managers and owners meetings down there at the combine. Of course, you know, it was the underbowl of the scouting combine, and we have Brandon back on the show. He survived his trip.
The prodigal son returns.
He survived his trip to Mexico. First off,
barely.
First off, before we go into obviously any of the talk, I assume you had a fantastic trip down there in Mexico.
It was great. It was a great trip. So let me kind of break this down for you as quickly as I can. So we stayed in all-inclusive. All-inclusive by itself was amazing. We should have just stayed there the entire time. So we flew in last Wednesday, and it was weird. When you go to Mexico, like, you have to go through Mexican customs, and then you get this, like, you almost have to, like, register that you're, like, obviously that you're visiting, and then you get this, like, little receipt kind of that's like, okay, in order to leave the country, you have to scan this QR code, download this form, and then you also have to keep this, like, receipt with you. And so the whole time we were, like, freaking out, kind of like, okay, do we have to fill this out? Do we have to, like, print this or something? I don't know. But, like, when we went to leave at the end of the trip, didn't matter at all. But, like, when you first go there, you'll kind of have, like, a little bit of a stress, probably that'll kind of sneak up on you, because it's like, okay, well, what am I supposed to do with this? Like, am I not going to be allowed to leave the country? Like, what's going on? And it was so weird. But after that, we got to the resort. Super, super amazing. Really, really, really nice resort. It's, like, right on the beach. It's all inclusive, like I mentioned. Yeah. We had, like, a junior suite, which was really nice. You get to, so, like, the whole thing is like a U-shaped building, which I can't really show well on with a background that, like, cuts me off. But you walk in, you're in the lobby. If you keep going straight through the lobby, you go out to, like, the kind of courtyard that's, like, between the sides of the building. And if you keep going straight, you'll hit the pools and the bar, and then you'll eventually get to the beach. So everything is, like, right there in a row. And it's just, like, just such a cool environment. The food was okay.
What part of Mexico?
Yeah. So, Big Mike, first of all, we see you. We saw that you were here early.
Yes.
My bad. It was me. I'm the reason we're late. My computer hates me. If I freeze or get kicked out, I'm not dead, I promise. But yeah, that's my bad. No, it was, like, a very touristy part of Mexico. It was in Puerto Vallarta. So, like, I was not in any danger. We didn't go anywhere that was, like, unsafe. We did go into town one of the days. We went into, like, again, the touristy part of town. Honestly, there were, like, actually so many people from America in the parts of the town that we went to. It was kind of weird. But ended up going into town at a meeting to, like, get to this meeting point, and we went on a bus and went snorkeling. And that's kind of where I was like, well, we should have just stayed at the resort, because it wasn't actually as fun as I think we intended it to be. But the resort itself was awesome and really good experience. I would definitely recommend it. It was fun. Was Nate Atkins there? No. I also did not get to see Bo Nix or the rest of the quarterback room and their partners, because I know they all were in Mexico. Did not get to see them, so that kind of sucked. But
I was gonna say it probably wasn't gonna be just him, because obviously the last video that was there, right, was it was Bo Nix, it was Jarrett Stidham, it was Zach Wilson, and all their significant others, and then Mike McGlinchey randomly randomly, showing up in the picture.
Yeah. Not see them. So that was the low point, is I didn't get to see them, but super cool. The beach was really fun. I did get a little bit too much sun and drank a few too many pina coladas, but it was free. Well, free.
Well, we are glad you are back. And a couple things of note. Make sure you hit that subscribe button for MHRT over there on YouTube. We are pushing really hard to get to 2,000 subscribers over there on YouTube. And also, he is not here tonight, but as you guys have been following along over there at Manely Broncos and everything, we have a new member that is a part of the Manely Broncos. We have Lopez, who is joining the Manely Broncos. He can't make it tonight, obviously, but the plan is for him to be here next week. So his first official show of being a part of the Manely Broncos podcast will be next week. So it's going to be an exciting time. He was doing some terrific work with Broncos Ave, and we're excited to have him not just be part of the Manely Broncos podcast, but the MHRT Network family. So certainly excited to have him. And great show, obviously lined up. Tonight we're going to be doing a scouting combine recap, and obviously, Brandon paid so much attention to the scouting combine.
Yeah, I saw everything.
I saw everything while being down there in Mexico.
Missed nothing.
Yeah,
I was basically in Indianapolis. I was on the beach just down the road.
Right.
from the Lucas Oil Stadium.
Yeah. So we're going to talk about that. And then, as we said, we are 1 week away from NFL free agency. So we're going to touch on, and as I see him in the chat, we're going to talk about a tweet that he had where he tweeted the recap from the Mike Kliss, was it the Mike Kliss pod, basically? The Kliss drop and the mic drop. So we're going to talk about a bit of the synopsis that he mentioned. There's quite a bit of some takeaways in there. So we're gonna talk about that, and that could be the extent of it. And then we're probably gonna do more free agency, of course. Next week is that's the official day, basically. It's Wednesday, right? But I'm ventured to guess that there's gonna be moves Monday, Tuesday, maybe even over the weekend.
It's so funny to me. Speaking of the combine and upcoming free agency, like 100%, you cannot convince me that this did not happen. There were moves that were made at the combine. Like agents left meetings at the combine knowing the numbers. Like teams knew the numbers of players that they were either going to be needing to bring back or looking to potentially sign. So it's funny to me. It's like legal tampering starts next Monday, and I'm like, no. This whole past week, there's been stuff happening behind closed doors at the combine, and no one. Like you can't convince me. You can't convince me otherwise. Basically,
over under.
It's literally like the NFL convention. So I do wonder if there were any contracts that were unofficially solidified. I think that would be fun to just be a fly on the wall
for people in the chat, and obviously you, Brandon. What's the over under on tweets that Adam Schefter, Mike Kliss, basically any reporter has in their draft right now that is ready to be sent the moment that news breaks?
Including Adam Schefter, probably 300.
Yeah, probably the moment a news breaks, he hits send.
He has hundreds, and not even all of them will even get sent because it's well, I think this is going to happen, and it doesn't happen, so I'm not going to send it. He has tons.
Too bad.
I don't know how he manages that. He probably has an assistant that just manages his drafts.
Too bad Jordan's not here. Could you imagine the face on Jordan or just anybody? If we tagged little Jordan Humphrey, that would be probably the dumbest move we could make. It's okay. We're gonna sign Alan Lazard. He's better version of little Jordan Humphrey anyway. All right. What do obviously I'm sure you did get a recap of a lot of the scouting combine, though, Brandon. Jordan and I did actually a deep dive on some of the key positional prospects, if you will, on positional groups. But what were some of the players that kind of caught your eye, either in some of those positions of need, or just one that was just simply, from the offensive line perspective, which, the Broncos may not necessarily need offensive line from, say starter perspective, maybe a center.
Well, this is a player that we have absolutely no connection to and probably will not. I've heard no chatter whatsoever about the Broncos and Armand Menbu from Missouri, who showed up a bit late. But dude came in, one of the top tackles in this class. we're not going to be going after him. I don't think. Could actually be their 20, although after his combine, probably not. He had like a sub 5 40-yard dash as an offensive lineman with some like also crazy like high jumps, long jumps. This dude is absolute freak. Also, he missed the Senior Bowl because he was sick, and like that really sucks, because what if we missed out on like seeing even more just like amazing offensive tackle play? Like the Senior Bowl was just, it's just kind of like the best way for people to see, for like nerds to enjoy athletic gifts and athletic traits among the top seniors and players in college football. It's just like, it's a freak show for nerds, basically is what it is. It's like, damn, did you guys see that rep? So Armand Membu was like kind of freaky that he ran that fast for the size that he is. Again, I really has no bearing whatsoever on the Broncos, because we're not really going to go after him at all. But that kind of stood out to me. The other thing that kind of sucked was, did you see Gunnar Helm's injury? Yeah. Like he ran like a really slow 40-yard dash. It was like kind of shocking, like would have tanked his stock a little bit. And then it comes back that like
pretty rough.
I don't even know, like 1 second in to the dash, he has like, you could kind of see when to slow down, he like kind of comes up limping. Yeah. And he had just like a nasty ankle sprain. Which like, honestly looked like it was going to be worse than an ankle sprain.
Yeah.
But yeah, that kind of sucked. Again, just like, unfortunately, I'm kind of already sick of seeing this connection being made all the time. But one person that did stand out to me in a good way was Colston Loveland, just like with his size that he came in at, and he didn't test.
I don't think much, but
no, he didn't test much, but just like the official measurables that we got on him. And then you kind of compare that to the tape that you watch him play at, and it's just sort of eye popping that he's able to move the way he is on tape at being like 6'6", 250 pounds.
And then so he wasn't even crazy. He wasn't even just the only tight end that actually like tested really well. I mean, like you look at specifically some of the tight ends were like 6'5", and like 240 to what was it, 250? Like you're mentioning, the athletes that you're seeing there was really impressive. I mean, Terrence Ferguson is 6'5", 245, 250, and he ran a 4.64. Mason Taylor, 6'5", 240-ish pounds, ran a 4.7 or so. Thomas Fedoni, right, a tight end from Nebraska, 6'5", 245 pounds. He ran a 4.7. I mean, it was just it was crazy that the amount of tight ends that were running a rather consistent 4.6, 4.7. And so it was wild. And I will say tight end was probably the one position where you're looking a bit more intently, and one of the players obviously that did not test was Elijah Arroyo. And actually, fun fact, Elijah Arroyo, Terrence Ferguson, and Thomas Fedoni were in the same recruiting class as Brock Bowers, interestingly enough.
Yeah.
Brock Bowers already played like 1 year.
Yeah. That's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
The other thing that just like absolutely stood out to me, in general, that absolutely is a big area for the Broncos this offseason, specifically is the running backs. Like the running backs in general were like just crazy, like video game numbers a little bit from the running backs at this combine. Specifically, go ahead.
I was going to say it was like must-see TV specifically.
It was you couldn't miss it. Specifically, and I know there's some guys on Twitter that are going to be already like nodding their heads to this name, who's kind of been a little bit of a sleeper, not mentioned a lot, although I know like there's some fans out there of Bashal Tutin. I don't know if I'm pronouncing this correctly, from Virginia Tech.
A lot of fumbles,
but dude is an absolute built in a lab kind of running back. So like if you can sort of get past the fumbles, the rest of the stuff they put on tape is like, he's a good running back. He is just otherworldly. Dude ran a 4.3 240.
4.3, yeah.
That's the same number that Devon Achane ran at the combine, who has been absolutely explosive for the Dolphins.
Yeah.
Tootin is 20 pounds heavier. He's 206 pounds. Achane is 188. That's insane. Tootin also had like a 40-inch vertical or something ridiculous, like absolute freak of a running back. So he was really, really good. There were a couple other guys that ran, like I think in the 4.3s.
You had
Blue ran in the 4.3s. Rashard Smith ran a 4.39. RJ Harvey ran a 4.4, like flat. And RJ Harvey is also over 200 pounds, like not a 4.32, but still pretty good. And yeah, I mean, just like in general, the running backs were like super, super impressive in testing. And like, I mean, it's kind of expected just for like that position in general and like what you've seen out of like how good that class is athletically this year. But definitely a impressive showing from them. Omarion Hampton also kind of showed out a little bit. He didn't run a 4.32, but running a 4.4 in general in any capacity in the 4.4s at 6 foot, 220 pounds is pretty impressive.
Caleb Johnson is one where it's like, you know, it's I mean, it wasn't certainly the 4.46, but I feel like you're almost like, you know, splitting hairs to a certain degree. You know, like you're kind of talking about it from the sense of like, still like, you know, do you prefer Caleb Johnson? Do you prefer Omarion Hampton? Because, you know, and I think I said it even too. It's like, it is wild to me. So, I mean, you probably look at all the rankings and it's the same in terms of the players that are in there, right? It's just a matter of like, who do you have that's in that top 5 as far as within the ranking? Obviously, I'm talking about, you know, the 2 Ohio State running backs, which, by the way, you want to talk about 2 running backs that are literally built in a lab and are like ready for like that kind of jump. Trevion Henderson and Quinshon Judkins. You could not have asked for a better combine from both of those guys. And Judkins specifically was a back that like he literally looked the part. And obviously, I know a lot of people are going to be giving Ohio State the praise there, but like he came from Ole Miss. And there's been something kind of like Penn State where like they recruit athletes. Like they've recruited athletes for quite a bit. And it kind of started in terms of like the attention on that wide receiver. And then you got this guy, Quinshon Judkins, who goes to Ohio State and absolutely shines with Henderson, right? And so you have all 5 of these guys kind of lumped in together, you know, to where it's almost like, you know, choose your favorite flavor, you know, of who you want. And it's crazy.
Ohio State is loaded, man.
It's crazy to me how deep this running back class really is.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I feel like Trevion Henderson specifically, I feel like has been kind of the draft darling, the apple of everyone's eye at the running back position recently, at least in my opinion, or maybe that's just on my timeline. But it feels like everyone's like kind of going crazy for Trevion, like with good reason. Like, don't get me wrong. They're definitely both very, very good running backs, but Trevion's kind of been looked at specifically for the Broncos, I think, as the Joker, Sean Payton's Joker, which I'm already getting tired of that saying, to be honest. But I've seen a lot of buzz on him. But Judkins, in his own right, is also just like an incredibly talented running back. Yeah. Like, I think no 2 running back tandem, no group of 2 running backs in running back tandem can come quite as close to the on-field equivalent of the Thunder and Lightning description that is so aptly named, used to name running back rooms. Like they are literally the like poster child for Thunder and Lightning. Judkins is just like the absolute enforcer. It's also kind of like it's pretty similar. It looks very much like the Lions running backs.
Basically,
like it's the entire Lions running back room. Like Jahmyr Gibbs is Trevion Henderson and David Montgomery is Quinshon Judkins.
Which
so
crazy
I would
enough,
be happy with either one of those.
Which I was gonna say, crazy enough, would you be upset? This is maybe not something that we talked about, like maybe at all. But would you be upset if the Broncos took, you know, Trevion Henderson and then Judkins, like back to back?
I mean, I don't think they can, but I would not be opposed to it. I mean, I think that'd be
wild.
Pretty crazy. I mean, maybe I don't know if Trevion Henderson. You have to take Trevion Henderson higher, in my opinion, just based on what I've seen.
You'd have to take him in the first round.
Well, if you traded down, I would be more okay with that. But like, he's definitely not making it to 52. Like, absolutely not. You could maybe get him at the very top of the second round, but like, it only takes one team to fall in love with one of these guys, and like, we all think that it's going to be Genty and maybe Omari and Hampton are going to be the two running backs taken in the first round, and maybe not even Hampton. That's the other thing with like, when your running back group is this deep and this loaded, it's kind of like it's almost literally like a bunch of people standing at a crosswalk and like waiting for someone to push the button to like hit the light on the crosswalk, right. But no one's actually pushed it, and you're just sitting there waiting for that to turn on, and it literally never does because no one's pushed it. It's like, okay, who's going to take a running back? Who's going to take a running back? And it's like, well, I don't need to. I'm just going to wait because there's so many good ones. Yeah, and it just like I don't think that's actually going to happen. I mean, Ashton Genty's not making it out of the top 15, in my opinion, but be top 10. Yeah, I'd be surprised if he makes past the Cowboys, to be honest, but. I just think that could be a little bit of a factor where there's so many that a lot of these teams are just going to be like, well, we're just going to wait. Like, we could take one here, but we're going to wait because there's so many. And like, you have, 20 teams that have that. I mean, you don't even have 20 teams that need a running back. You have 15 teams that have that viewpoint. And it's like, okay, well, what happens?
And I think that's why it's.
Yeah, I think it would be like, maybe trade down to like 28, 29 and take
Trevion
and then take John Judkins at 52. I would probably, it would be cool, but I would probably lose my mind because there's so many other good players in this class that like you could also literally just wait until you could get RJ Harvey, you could get Jadon Blue, you could get in the 4th, 5th round. And they're going to give you probably like 85% of what maybe even more of what one of these guys is going to do. So I'm kind of like, I would kind of be pissed, but it'd be cool. It'd be cool.
But it is one of those things like Sean operates at such a completely different mindset. It is like that Dan Campbell like way of thinking where it's just like he just evaluates things so completely different, than everybody else. Where it's just like I'm not ruling anything out at this point. To where it's like, and I think that the early buzz right now, and I'm not upset at it, is Omari and Hampton at 20. Like that's the early buzz right now is Hampton at 20. So it's like, but like Sean is so different and so wired. I wouldn't even be putting it past him to take Henderson at 20. Like that's just how crazy he kind of operates. Now, Big Mike chimes in and
look, I love Jaron Henderson, but even I think that's a little rich. Like, wait till round 3 and take Devin Neal. We met with Cam Scatterbo at the combine. Brashard Smith has probably off a little bit.
I think we literally met with darn near every single running back at the scouting, give or take.
Pretty sure I met with Bashal Tootin. But
by the way,
look, I wouldn't be mad at it, but that'd be a little rich for me. Like if we're taking Ashton Genty at 20, great. I'm totally okay with that. But I think anyone else, look, I love Omari and Hampton. I love Caleb Johnson. But again, I'm even in that same boat. I'm like, look, I'd rather take give me Colston Loveland at 20. Fine. Feed into what everyone thinks is going to happen. I don't even think that's going to happen. But like, I'd rather do that than take one of those other running backs that's not named Ashton Genty at 20. I'd rather take a defensive lineman at 20. I have zero say in this, but like, I just think that's kind of funny.
I don't know. I think that, with the way that things kind of been changing a little bit with running the football and with the Broncos, being so heavy on this whole Joker idea, it kind of lends to believe that either tight end or running back, in this instance, Omari and Hampton, or one of these other top 5 running backs is going to end up being taken as like one of the first few picks. You know what I mean? By the way, breaking news, the Chargers released Joey Bosa.
That's not even that surprising. They're in trouble on the cap. But like, what also could be funny to me it's like, is Sean Payton just pulling the wool over our eyes? Is he just like telling everyone, yeah, we want a joker, we want a joker, we want a joker? He's just like messing with them. He's like it's sort of like what he said he did last year, where he's baiting teams that are thinking that they're going to trade up for JJ McCarthy or something. And it's like, yeah, we need a joker. And everyone's like, okay, Colson Loveland. And it's like, no, we're just going to sit there. We're going to take Shamar Stewart at 20, Kenneth Grant at 20. Like,
or
we're going to take Walter Nolan. I don't know. That's just funny.
We'll take Nick Imanwari.
That guy's an absolute freak.
Did you see his stats, by the way, when you look at his maybe you haven't, but if you go look and if you go to MathBomb, like the Twitter account, and you go to the website,
his RAS score,
go compare Nick Imanwari to DK Metcalf, who, funny enough, we'll probably talk about. But
we'll talk about DK Metcalf. Nick Imanwari's RAS score is an unofficial 10. That's funny.
But if you compare it to like a wide receiver, it's nuts.
Yeah. That's crazy. This dude is a freak, man.
Yeah.
I
wouldn't.
I just think that would be so funny to just like pull the wool over our eyes a little bit and just be like, yeah, we want a joker, and then they just take like Walter Nolan. So I wouldn't be surprised about anything, and I think it's one of the reasons why I'm kind of just open to anything. But I think that just overall to maybe just tie it into what Mikey shared, and respect my coach, what he shared on his Twitter, he shared kind of like a synopsis of the mic drop, if you will, on the pod. The takeaways, if you will, as we are kind of blending scouting combine and free agency a little bit. He did mention that he felt like tight end and running back were going to be addressed in the draft. So maybe not necessarily in free agency. And I will say, I mean, that's a smart decision given like how stacked this draft is at both those positions. The only one that's a little bit like just kind of is tight end. Mostly because again, there's the tight end stigma of like they just don't really contribute as running back or as much as running backs as rookies. Which I mean has kind of been bucked a little bit recently with obviously offensive rookie of the year candidate Brock Bowers this year, and then last year so it was Sam Laporta. So it's kind of turned on its head a little bit, but I feel like there's enough of still like a sample size there to maybe be a little hesitant to like expect immediate production from a rookie tight end. But I mean, I do think it's, again, I think that's the smart play. Like there's not even that many great tight ends available in free agency. So,
but the thing that I wouldn't even be ruling out is, it may not be the draft, or it may be the draft and both, but I wouldn't put it past them to be a bit aggressive in the trade market either, because like you actually look at the trade market and there's probably a little bit more, appealing players to go after via trade. Obviously, David Njoku is going to be the popular one because of, maybe current status of, Myles Garrett, and then, current standing of the Cleveland Browns. So it probably would be worth another phone call. Whether or not they actually trade him, is a conversation for another day. But the one player specifically is one that like kind of went, lower down in terms of, a possible solution for the Broncos at tight end as the season was going on. Well, as the season ended, it kind of came back as a possible trade candidate, and that is Mark Andrews.
I was about to talk about Mark Andrews. Yeah.
Because I was going to say, like, there is an absolute chance that a team, and maybe that's the Broncos, trade for a guy like Mark Andrews. Because I wouldn't put it past them to handle. Because I wouldn't put it past them to handle it like Baltimore, where you get a Mark Andrews and then you go and get a
Isaiah Likely,
a version of him, or just another, playmaker. And then at that point, you have Adam Troutman on your roster, who's a little bit more of a well-rounded-ish tight end. And then you have two more dynamic tight ends. Right?
The only thing, I mean, I totally get you. Like, I would not be out on Mark Andrews, to be honest, but you got to give me a big haircut on that trade value, because like he's going to turn 30 by the time the season starts, and he's a $16 million cap hit.
He's going to have to shave some of that.
Shave some of that off. They got to take some of that cap hit. Something's got to happen there, because I'm not taking that straight up from the Broncos. But I love Mark Andrews. Like, I don't think that would be a bad move by any means to kind of get, again, that immediate production and then still like draft a tight end. Maybe draft 2 tight ends. Like, I feel like the way the Broncos are right now at tight end, like, especially even for the past several years, you can't really do too much.
Yeah.
You can't do too much. You can't put too many guys in that room because there's nothing in that room, to be honest, right now.
What do you feel
for Mark Andrews or sign who's that tight end who was on the Bengals? Gesicki. Sign Gesicki, but still draft Rondé Gadsden or maybe let Gunnar Helm recover his ankle a little bit and take him later. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, that would be an interesting
and that's target. The thing is, like, it depends on the target you get, but it would have to be the caveat of, okay, you went and got this guy, go out and get another one. Like Mike Gesicki specifically. Whenever I mention about Mike Gesicki, like, I wouldn't be the least bit surprised if, say they do get Gesicki, and obviously there's a trend where they might actually have the opportunity if they pay T. Higgins and they pay, Jamar Chase, which it seems like that's kind of where things are trending, is they're going to be paying both.
Mm-hmm.
They probably
kind of have to now.
So I just think that, when you look at it from the standpoint of, like, I wouldn't be upset by it. I wouldn't be upset if they got Gesicki. It's the caveat of, okay, you go out and get Gesicki. Well, let's go out and maybe save things up a little bit and go out and get another athletic tight end, or get another, more of a blocker-ish tight end, like a Terrence Ferguson, right? Blocker / receiver. Maybe that Gunnar Helm is where it fits a little bit. So we did get a comment about Dylan Sampson. We didn't get a chance to talk about much.
I like Dylan Sampson. He's another. Throw it on the pile of running back names that are good running backs in this draft.
Also from Tennessee, and we know that what's his face is Sean Payton knows about the University of Tennessee quite well. Really good receiver. Really good receiver. In terms of out of the backfield, and I think that at times he kind of gets lost in the, not necessarily the top 5, but he kind of gets lost in the, the conversation of, guys like after Quinshon Judkins, or like once you hit Judkins, that's when you start talking about Dylan Sampson, and then that's when you get to maybe guys like DJ Giddens, who, by the way, had a really good combine for the size that he had, for the size that Giddens is. And he runs what did he run? Like a 4.43 at that size. So, so super, super impressive. But like Tootin, right, is the
darn Tootin. I'm just waiting for that to happen. Sorry, someone's gonna say darn Tootin. He does. Sampson is kind of one of those guys that, like, he's to go back to the cliche Thunder and Lightning, he's the Lightning. He's your speed back. He's super, super fast. He is going to hit the hole hard. He could definitely kind of give you something in the passing game, but I do agree, like, he's got to kind of figure out a way to get him to stick him. I don't know, get him something to let him hold on to the ball a little bit. Specifically for guys that have fumble issues, like, I'm curious to get your take on this too, I guess. And it's kind of a dumb question because you kind of assume what the answer is, but, like, that's something I look at even more and place more of a value on when I'm specifically also looking at a guy that I might use out of the passing game. In terms of, like, if he's, like, has a fumble problem, because, like, hanging the ball off is one thing. Like, yes, you can have some fumble drops, like, that's going to happen, but if I'm also trusting you to catch the ball and be a weapon for my quarterback to throw to, like, you got to have sure hands. And to me, that just does not say that, like, you have sure hands. And, like, that can be two different things. I mean, being able to hold on to the ball, being able to catch the ball, different things. But just, like, again, I feel like that makes it less likely that I'm going to trust you and being able to, like, actually be a viable pass catcher.
Yeah. As far as Dreamweaver does mention, as we were just kind of talking about tight end, but I don't necessarily see it, but it is funny, and we mentioned this on 52 Hitty yesterday, Brandon. But it is really kind of funny to see that of all the players that really stuck around in Seattle, is the player that received the most hate necessarily, aside from Draymond Jones, which he got cut, but but Noah Fant.
How's that Zach Allen decision looking now?
It's looking really good, and hopefully they pay him $25 million a year.
Worth it.
But it's funny to see that Fant's the one that's been sticking around more down there in Seattle.
Yeah,
I don't see it happening necessarily.
No. I don't think that's going to happen.
And then D-Rock just mentions about Derek Harmon in the first. I think just you and I briefly touched on it, right? In the sense of like the redirects from I still don't hate the idea of defensive line in the first round. I mean, and this is something that I think you and I touched on even post Super Bowl, but like the idea of really focusing on the trenches and and focusing a little bit on just the idea that you can really build up front. Right. And so when you have guys like DJ Jones, possibly, and I would assume like in the draft, you have to make a decision there. So,
yeah. Yeah. Sorry, my mic sucked together for a second. No, it's the Eagles blueprint.
It's the Eagles blueprint. But getting guys like a Kenneth Grant, one, I don't want him to go to the Chargers for one. He's not lasting until the second round, like that one mock draft that I did. I think that when you look at it from just the trenches, though, if you can be able to build it with guys like Harmon, Grant, Walter Nolan, any of those players up front, I wouldn't bat an eye in the sense like I wouldn't be opposed to it all. I think I still think the ideal scenario is them trading back, acquiring assets, and then build it mostly from day two, if you will. By the way, just real quickly on Joey Bosa, I personally think he goes to San Francisco and plays with his brother. Sounds like his mom has been kind of clamoring for it for months based on some of the things that I was like reading. All right. Any other things you want to talk about from the combine, or do you want to kind of go into some of the fantasy stuff?
Completely unrelated, but did you see Travis Hunter's interview? Like at the podium?
Briefly, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Like someone asks him if Travis Hunter, the wide receiver, is going up against Travis Hunter, the cornerback, which one is winning? And he just says Travis Hunter.
It has to be like one of the most like softball questions, that would have to be asked.
Mm-hmm.
I will say the wide receiver room would be one where, you have Matthew Golden talk all that crap, or not Matthew Golden, Isaiah Bond. Bond talk all that crap of, I'm going to break, Xavier Worthy's time of 4.21. And he didn't just not break it, because he didn't break it. He ran a 4.4, like a 4.4, like 1 or something, which is like an okay time. But if you go out there and you confidently or arrogantly say that I'm going to be, breaking, your former teammate's record of, 4.21, and you run a 4.4, man, is that a bad look for you?
I mean, I feel like that's just like the alpha trash talk. But I mean, I do think he didn't back it up.
That ain't backing it up at all. It just it looks really, really bad. But there were some wide receivers, I mean, that did really impress him, in themselves. And I don't want to talk too much about the Tez Johnson thing, because that's going to be the talk of the town. That's going to go even more for 15 minutes. But there were some wide receivers that I thought, really did help themselves. I mean, Dante Thornton, that's one where, I mean, what, a 6 foot, any wide receiver that is like 6'3", right, range, and they run in the 4.3 range, that is actually absurd with the amount of size and everything. I just think that when you look at it just from that size, it's so hard to ignore. Like it is almost like the DK Metcalfs, right? Like when you see them run at that kind of size, it's freaky. Like it is absolutely freaky.
Yeah. There's some real freaks in nature out there, man. It's weird.
Luther Burden. I think there was some conversation that they like ran, or that he would like run like the 4.5s or something like that.
I didn't hear that at all. But I was in Mexico, so.
But he basically decided to run a 4.4.
I mean, he ran a 4.4 almost flat. That's pretty good for him.
That's really good.
Yeah, I mean, I would be surprised if he didn't run a 4.4, to be honest. But yeah, him even sniffing below 4.4 is good for him at over 200 pounds again, which just makes what some of the running backs did even more crazy.
Another one, of course, would be one, and he's actually a favorite, if you will, for a trade down candidate, or if he just somehow survives and he's there within the Broncos pick of the second round, he would be in that list of players that I would consider. Alec Ayamaner running a 4.4, also with that size. Super, super impressive.
Ayamaner is one of those guys that I've kind of been like sort of having a little bit of a draft crush on if he's there in the second round for us. I don't know if I really see that happening, because I don't think he's going to be a round one guy. I think he's going to be a round two guy, but I think he's going to probably go like pretty early in the second round. I don't think he's going to be there for us to be able to pick. But didn't he have like against Colorado? Didn't he have like 250 yards, like 3 touchdowns or something?
Jalen Royals, man. As much hype as we talk about Luther Burden, man, you can get.
Oh, I'm sorry, 295 yards and 3 touchdowns. My bad.
Yeah, as much as we talk about Luther Burden, great.
Oh, I love Jalen Royals.
Jalen Royals is like the Kirkland brand, version of Luther Burden. I mean, he is. There's just so much to like there.
And that's not even a dunk on Royals, because Kirkland brand anything is amazing.
Hey, Kirkland
they make some good. I have 4 Kirkland golf clubs. Like Jalen, if you're listening, which I know you're not, you will never hear this. I promise we're not hating on you. That's a good thing.
Yeah, it is a good thing. My buddy, maybe you met him.
Yeah, Boggins gets it.
But he plays with Kirkland golf balls, and he swears by it.
I have Kirkland balls too. I have Kirkland golf balls as well. Yeah.
But it's crazy. I when I use this comparison, it's not even a bad thing, but it's like Jalen Royals feels to me like the Javon Baker of this class, which is crazy, because I think that maybe in comparison wise, like I feel like it's somewhat similar. But like, yeah, Javon Baker was like really slept on, and hopefully he can be able to do things with the Patriots. But yeah, Royals is one of those guys, like he could surprise a lot of people, depending on, the type of situation and fit that he goes to. Like I think he's here.
What's up?
I think he fits here. Like that's what
absolutely. Oh, I love Jalen Royals. If he is there in the third round, sprint to the podium. Third
round, you said?
I would love it.
No.
I don't know if it's going to last that long. But I would love to take him in the third round if at all possible.
Yeah. By the way, when we did have Boggins on, he brought it in the comments. I'd love for Boggins to explain this, because like remember back when he was really high on Trey Harris. Right?
He's the highest person on Trey Harris I've ever seen.
Like he was like really super high on him, and I'm sure he's still like really high on Harris. But it's like it's crazy.
No, not at all.
But it's crazy to see like how he's now kind of like when you look at it from like the Ayamaner, like Jaden Higgins, some of those guys, like a possible Sutton replacement. like Trey Harris, like,
Sure.
like would also fall into that category of like, if you just so happen to want to move from Sutton, Harris would be one of those guys.
All right. As long as we're talking about wide receivers, we're talking about replacing Courtland Sutton, and we're talking about early day 2 picks in the NFL draft. What you think about trading for a certain Seattle Seahawks wide receiver that just requested a trade after seeing his teammate get cut?
I know Boggins will love it now. The fact that he lives in the Pacific Northwest, and
I am speaking of course, of DK Metcalf. If anyone didn't understand that,
I don't know. Obviously, it's the T. Higgins argument. If you, in a perfect, video game world, I'd pay Courtland Sutton wide receiver 2 money, and I'd pay DK Metcalf, the wide receiver 1 money. That's the Madden world. But I think.
Do you think that they fill too much of the same bucket?
No, I think Metcalf is too big, too physical of a wide receiver, and too dominant of a wide receiver, more so than Sutton. And I also think
I agree with you. I'm just curious.
But I also think though that when you make that trade, that's why I say T. Higgins. When you make that trade, you have to do the swap, because in essence, if you're not going to be paying Courtland Sutton necessarily, you might as well make the commitment and pay DK Metcalf, or you might make the commitment and pay T. Higgins, right? So like, it's just like one where if you're going to be doing a trade like that, you're shipping off Sutton and getting DK and compensating him.
And that's the only reason I mention this in a context of like, okay, if we're talking about trading Courtland Sutton or replacing Courtland Sutton, what do you think about DK Metcalf? Because DK Metcalf, I love the idea of DK Metcalf. Like, I would love him in Denver, but there's some things that would have to happen for me to want to pull the trigger on that, because I think like similar to what you're pretty much just saying, like I would probably not want to keep them both. Like I would trade for DK Metcalf as my 1. I would no longer have Courtland Sutton. I would maybe trade him to maybe the Steelers if they're still interested, or maybe even like we trade him to Seattle in that deal. Like they get a wide receiver back. I don't know what that looks like, but DK Metcalf is going to have a $31 million cap hit.
Right.
And that's the last year of his deal. They're going to have to pay him as well. Like both of those things are not really going to fly here. They're going to have to either do something to
deal.
Yeah. Like you gotta find a way to drastically lower that cap hit if we're gonna take that on, and then we're still gonna have to pay him. I mean, like obviously we're gonna like if we extend him, like we can kind of lower that ourselves. But like I don't want to just take that from Seattle. Like I want them to cover some of it or lower the cost a little bit or something. I wouldn't hate it if we do that and we replace Sutton with him. I would still go after. I would probably still even maybe draft a wide receiver in the later rounds this draft or something. Like, I don't really see us being in the DK Metcalf sweepstakes, to be honest. Like, I just don't think that's in the cards, but I'm intrigued by the idea if the things that I just mentioned all take place.
However, in terms of wide receiver, one of the things that was mentioned, and I think this is actually one of the rather large
in the mic drop.
In the mic drop pod was, there was so much speculation, so much talk about the Broncos. No, they are not interested in wide receiver. Well, they might be interested in wide receiver, but he goes in his podcast and he mentions, that they're going to try their best and go after a wide receiver too. Well, if you look,
he also said 2.5, which was interesting to me.
Right, but I think that or two,
like maybe more of like a little bit of a role player gadget guy.
But I just think that what's interesting though is when you look at the wide receiver 2 players.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Cooper Kupp fits that, and if he is released, he would fit based on contract that he would probably even be getting. He would be fitting, that wide receiver 2 number. And I would venture to guess that once they do pay Courtland Sutton, which they will, that sounds like the way things are also trending is that they will pay Courtland Sutton.
Mm-hmm.
He's probably going to be getting the $20 million a year, not $30 million a year, but he's going to be getting the upwards of $20 million. But to go further with it, you look at the wide receiver 2 market. There's guys like Cooper Kupp, if he's released. Christian Kirk is another fantastic one that just got released by the Jacksonville Jaguars. You have Amari Cooper, who is certainly out there. You have maybe Keenan Allen.
Let me run 2 different things by you real quick. Is Chris Godwin a wide receiver 1 or wide receiver 2?
He's going to be paid wide receiver 1 money.
He's going to be paid like a wide receiver 1 probably, but like in the way that you would use him, he's primarily more of like a slot guy. I can see a role like where even though you're paying him as wide receiver 1, he's still a like absolutely vital piece of your offense. Like he's kind of still your slot wide receiver. Like he's still kind of in the wide receiver 2 role a little bit, even though like he can still get almost wide receiver 1 targets. It's a little interesting. It's almost like wide receiver 1.5. But I would love Chris Godwin.
I like
Chris Godwin.
I will say though, I like Godwin better than Sutton.
Me too.
But I will say, and I think I've been on record saying this: if they show interest in Cooper Kupp,
yeah,
I would not be the least bit surprised if they at least kick the tires on the idea of Godwin, because you look at the player and you look at the similarities between both of them. It would be logical to, assume that, okay, the Broncos are going to be interested in Cooper Kupp. They might as well kick the tires on a bit of a younger-ish option. With Godwin.
Well, speaking of Cooper Kupp, did you see what Les Snead said today? So if anyone who potentially missed this, Les Snead, general manager of the Rams, said that basically like the scenario in which Cooper Kupp remains a Los Angeles Ram is the least likely scenario that could happen.
So welcome to the Denver Broncos, Cooper Kupp.
So, yeah.
But I thought the wide receiver 2 or 2.5, but nonetheless, like going after that kind of position, I thought was one of the bigger takeaways from that. In terms of the points that Mike brought up. So the fact that, and there's some players out there, I thought it's interesting. You mentioned a gadget player, and I think I mentioned him like during the season, but I think that what's interesting is he's not a joker, and I think that
I'm already tired of the word joker,
but I just think that he would have fit this team, but given the certain way they have been using Marvin Mims, I don't see his role at all here for the Broncos, and that would be Rondale Moore.
Yeah, Rondale Moore. If we didn't have Marvin Mims again, I think that's what you just said, I would be more interested in Rondale Moore. But yeah, I'm totally out on him personally. But I know that's kind of what you're saying is like Marvin Mims sort of fills that role for him. But that's interesting to bring that up because it's like, again, you talk about more of the gadget guy. Like to me, that could be Marvin Mims. So like, what do they see Marvin Mims' role as? Is what I want to know. Like, is Marvin Mims going to be your wide receiver 2? And then like whoever you're trying to get here, this in the wide receiver 2.5 role is going to be like your gadget player, or like it's just interesting to me because to me it also feels like I don't think they see this wide receiver room as being complete. Like I think that they even believe that it's missing something. Maybe they think it's missing wide receiver 1 and it's not Courtland Sutton and they're going after someone else. I don't know, but if like just what is the Marvin Mims role? Because to me right now, Marvin Mims is that speed guy that can kind of be your wide receiver 2.5, wide receiver 3, but I don't know if he's going to be specifically your wide receiver 2. And I think that might even be a lot to put on his shoulders next year. I mean, yeah, he had a pretty decent, like, I wouldn't say he had a breakout season this year by any means, but he did sort of start to come alive a little bit and looked.
It was quite the alive, though. I mean,
pretty good. Yeah. I wouldn't call it a breakout, though.
No, but for half a season, that was
interesting.
But for half a season, like I don't think anybody had that on their radar. The way that he completely took off in the sense of having like 500 yards, in essence of receiving, for half a season.
I mean, 500 yards, 6 touchdowns, like, damn.
Yeah. So, and I do agree this team needs speed, but I think that I think they would say that they probably have it on the roster. and it's just about developing it. Because you do look at guys like Troy Franklin and Marvin Mims. That's speed for you. What they would probably need is those guys who can be able to work in the middle of the field, or another dominant wide receiver that can be able to collect a little bit of a lion's share and take the pressure off of Courtland Sutton. I think would be rather nice, and I think that's where
his name is Chris Godwin.
But I
know it's a little bit that's a little bit of my pipe dream. I don't think that's.
But
I don't think it's in the picture, but I don't know if it's going to happen.
We would be remiss if we didn't talk about a player who has kind of been should I mention lately on the timeline, and that is a guy who's down there in the big city, and that would be Darius Slayton. When you talk about a player who on the offensive side of the ball that would probably fit like the Brandon Jones offensive signing, I actually think that Slayton would probably fit the bill of that. A player who he's kind of been forgotten a little bit about, with the New York Giants. Super talented wide receiver, actually, like in terms of the room that they had there with the Giants. But he comes to Denver with a really well-used system for, creating opportunities for the wide receivers. I'm actually intrigued by the possibility of a guy like a Darius Slayton, because he does feel like a rather, in his ceiling, a high-end, wide receiver too, right? When you kind of look at it. So his market will be really fascinating to see whether or not he gets, a little bit above, $10 million a year, for that wide receiver 2 money. So I'm Slayton is definitely one of those guys that kind of catches my eye a little bit. And I was going to say that he's in that wide receiver 2-ish category.
Sure. I mean, I do think that's a pretty good example of maybe that wide receiver 2.5 kind of guy, wide receiver 2. I do wonder how much in demand he's going to be. Like, I think you might have quite a few suitors for someone like Darius Slayton, because he's not going to break the bank, and he's going to be able to give you a fairly proven threat at wide receiver that can definitely give you something in the deep ball game, which I feel like a lot of teams are probably wanting to get more of, just based on like the way that we're seeing, like the top weapons being able to do. And like, I mean, yes, Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, like they're Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson, trying to say both those names back to back really quickly is not going well. But I just think like there's a lot of teams that I think can look at someone like Darius Slayton and think, yeah, like that's going to give us an influx of speed at wide receiver that's not going to cost a lot of money and it can be somewhat dependable. And like, to me, I think that means you're going to be probably seeing a little bit more of a bidding war with him. So I love the idea, but I think that might make him a bit more expensive than you would normally want to pay for him.
But his market is going to be one where it's fascinating, because it could fluctuate to where he's not going to command like the 20 million. But
no, he's definitely not.
Yeah, but it's one where his market's going to be one where I'm curious to see how it shakes out, because, is it somewhat close to the 20, right? Like, sure. Is it in, like, not to actually to use the comparison to where he was with the Jaguars in signing Christian Kirk, right? Christian Kirk was nowhere near the 20 million a year, right? Mm-hmm. And then he signs with the Jaguars, and he's 20 million a year with the Jaguars. And I mean, and to be fair, like the Jaguars or Florida, there it's like a no state tax, and everything down there in Florida. So, and get your money while you can necessarily, but like the 20 million was just just a crazy and absurd contract. So
yeah, that's true. I do think there's going to be a lot of teams that turn on the Darius Slayton tape though and see like a staggering amount of like absolutely horrific Daniel Jones throws that like have just completely missed on Darius Slayton that was open like halfway down the field.
And you know what I didn't realize? He for the majority of his career, if you will, every single ounce of his career with the Giants, he's had probably on average 750, give or take, receiving yards. He was injured, for it seemed like maybe where he played in 13 games but started in 5 with only like 339. And then you have 573 in terms of like the very last year, with the Giants. He's going to be that would be such an interesting one if the Broncos could be able to pull it off. Obviously, we would be remiss if we didn't. Now that we're kind of diving a little bit into free agency, it sounded like Kliss mentioned, that their big splash would be coming from probably the linebacker position. Well, the one player we could certainly count off of that is a player who, is Zach Bond.
Zach Bond got paid.
And he got paid. And I think that the one thing we can say, Brandon, to sum all of that up, there was no way the Broncos were paying that contract. I will say this, though. I'm kind of convinced, though, that if he was to be leaving the Eagles, I do wonder if the Broncos were his next team, because you do look at the connections of being drafted, by Sean Payton, by Cody Rager, by in terms of just the overall coaching side in college with Jim Leonard. I do wonder if the draw of playing for the Broncos would have been quite large. As far as the contract, though, I'm not sure the Broncos would have gone north of 15 million a year.
No, I don't see them wanting to pay that much for their linebacker. I do think, and this was another name that was this was another name in the mic drop that kind of came up, but Jamie Sherwood has been connected to the Broncos enough where I would feel reasonably confident thinking that we're going to be going pretty hard after him. He's probably going to be a Bronco. Obviously I don't know for sure, and who knows what other teams are going to be offering him, but I've seen him connected to us enough. And him also being mentioned specifically by name on that mic drop.
Dre Greenlaw was another one.
Dre Greenlaw, another one too. Hasn't Greenlaw had some injury issues though recently?
Greenlaw. Yeah, no, he's the guy that got injured literally in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, he also had, I think he had a concussion in training camp last year or something. So Greenlaw, I'm a little bit more on just because of that injury history, but Jamie Sherwood, I think, not a bad player to go after for your linebacker spot in free agency. Definitely you have to add someone there. You have to upgrade that somehow. Just because we haven't had much from our linebackers for a little bit now, to be honest with you. There were a couple of flashes in the pan that we were able to kind of get out of some guys, but I do think they're going to do something there. And Jamie Sherwood has just been connected to us enough. He's a good linebacker. He's quick. He's not an absolute liability in coverage.
Well, it's one of those things too about Sherwood where it's it's to the point where he needs the pay raise. He's earned the pay raise in a sense. He had such a great season, right? He had such a great season with the Jets, right? Mm-hmm. Finally over 100 tackles. I will say, when you look at it from the standpoint of that, the question just could be how much will a team pay for him? He is one where it's you might have to hit the 15 in order to get him.
I don't know. I don't know about necessarily that high, but maybe. I think that's going to be another one of those players where they turn on the Jets tape and it's oh, the Jets are absolute trash, but who's this track star running across the middle of the field? I don't think he's going to get to that 30 or to that $15 million a year range.
He's 30 million a year.
The 30 million a year. No, I was looking at the guaranteed money for Zach Bond, and I was speaking the wrong number, but I think maybe something closer to 9. I think you can get him for 9. That's a steal. I would absolutely love that. And sign me up all day long.
Jamie Sherwood on Spotrac is 2 years, $14.3 million.
That's a
market value.
It's a dang steal.
That's
so. I'm in there like swimwear for that.
Which, by the way, for anybody that also does not know, Sherwood is connected to Bo Nix, and not just from the time with Oregon. Sherwood actually has ties to Bo Nix because they were at Auburn at the same time.
You know what's so funny? I wondered if Darius Slayton and Bo Nix played at Auburn together 1 year apart.
1 year apart.
Sucked.
But
Sherwood, Alex, thank you, man. Great to see you.
Yeah, he survived his trip.
I did. Now this is the life-size decoy of Brandon.
Yeah.
Welcome.
The doppelganger. But no, I think that Sherwood is going to be a really kind of fun one to look into. But I think Greenlaw certainly is one where I don't want to ignore. But I also think though that Sherwood also kind of lends me to the idea that there's another linebacker I wouldn't even hesitate wanting to bring in, and this is the agenda in the sense of like rebuilding the linebacker room. Matty and Brandon. That's like, I hate to say it, but moving on from Singleton is my personal preference. So moving on from Singleton and not bringing back Barton, but bringing in guys like, say, like a Divine Diablo, and a Jamian Sherwood, where you have like both of these guys who were former safeties, converted linebacker. You've got that pure athleticism, where you can have both those types of linebackers with you playing defense. And you can trust whoever it is that you want to wear the green dot at that point. But, and maybe even one of those is, Greenlaw, right? I think because like the thing with Greenlaw is like the moment you sign Greenlaw, you almost feel like you almost have to have some sort of insurance policy with you on that team, just in case, for whatever reason, something happens with him again where he gets injured.
Yeah. Well, there's another guy that I feel like we could probably make a run at in free agency, and like I would not be mad about it. Specifically on the defensive line, if we are going to be losing DJ Jones at all, is fellow AFC West run stuffer that is a little bit under the radar in Poona Ford from the Chargers. Dude absolutely balled out for the Chargers. He was crazy in LA this last year. And they got him on like a 1 year cheap deal. So sort of like a prove it deal, and he proved it. Like, dude kind of went off a little bit. He's an absolute beast against the run. I would not be mad at all if we got him for maybe like $7 million a year, something like that.
There's some rumors there.
I would love that. Especially if, again, we can't keep DJ Jones, like natural replacement right there in Poona Ford. That'd be super. Also, don't let the Chargers keep him. Win-win.
I mean, they did free up
$24 million, I think, or something like that tonight. Poona's been love Poon. Like gotta get all the Poon we can. In the predominantly orange chat, we have a little contest going about who's going to be our first
free agent signing
outside of the team, right? Like not re-signing one of our own guys. And Poona is mine. Like I think, and so they say like, oh well, maybe the Broncos will do a lot in the second wave, but like you can get some of these players early and just kind of like lock them in. Maybe the guys that are getting overlooked initially, I think Poona Ford's going to be one of them. Spotrac has him 1 year, $6.6 million.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So like, let's just go ahead and spend the $13 million per year and bring in Sherwood and Poona and have two guys that can really help.
Dude, that would be an absolute steal if we got both those guys at a total of $13 million a year.
Well, and I think that's one of the reasons why I'm not the least bit upset. Like, let's just say they re-signed DJ Jones, which DJ Jones, I would venture to guess, is going to be signing for less, in the deal that he signed last time, which was like 3 for $30 the last time. Like, I'm sure he would be signing for less. And you can get Sheldon Rankins, from the Cincinnati Bengals, who, Rankins has the relationship with, Sean Payton. So, and I don't know when necessarily, that kind of thing would happen. Because I think the thing with Rankins is he's a bit of an older guy, and where he knows exactly what his market is, where he is, probably some of the teams already that he's interested in. So he's kind of like on his own little timeline. And when that timing is right, then that's when he signs. That's kind of what you see all the time with some of those veteran options is like they're kind of like on their own timeline, if you will. But I love the idea of signing or getting 2 players, if you will, on that defensive line. And I think that I love that you brought up the stuff, Matty, about like the first wave, second wave, because I will say there is a misconception about free agency. Yes, there are a lot of big free agents that do sign in the first wave and second wave, but still there are like quite a few players that do sign in the first wave of free agency where it's like, wait, why did he sign? Or why did he sign in like the first or second wave of free agency? Well, he just wanted to get his deal done. He just, and I think that at the end of the day, it's like their interests of what they would like to do completely outweighs ours, and so it's just like, so I'm glad that you at least brought it up, because I think that sometimes like some fans are like, well, no, why did he sign in the first wave of free agency? Almost making it seem like he's a lot bigger player in essence, like amongst one of those stars.
Mm-hmm.
Dude, your shirt is lit.
Thank you.
Love your shirt. DJ Jones, is it Spotrac or Spot Rack?
I don't know. I feel like it's tomato.
I'm going to call it known as Prince. I don't know.
I'm going to call it the Spo. The Spo has him at 1 year, 11.1 million. So according to them, we could either have one DJ Jones, or for just 2 million more, we can have Sherwood and drive a Ford. So
Moneyball spending.
Like, let's go. Like, what are we doing here?
Matty, you weren't here, but we did have the conversation where on Kliss's podcast, kind of like roughly like the biggest takeaway, or one of the biggest takeaways was that wide receiver 2 or 2.5, in the sense,
I
but it's one where it's like, though, like that I thought was a bit of a surprising takeaway, because like there was just been so much known about like, hey, the Broncos aren't going to be interested in a wide receiver. Well, no, wait a minute. They might be interested in a wide receiver, but it might actually not be a wide receiver 2, but they're interested in a veteran wide receiver. Well, that veteran wide receiver ranges from 4, 5 to 2, based on your room,
or 1A ish.
So
even,
yeah. What's your take on that? Like in terms of wide receiver 2, 2.5?
Well, hot take. I don't think that Courtland Sutton is written in ink wide receiver 1. That's not to say he's not valuable.
I agree with you.
That's not to say that he's not important and he doesn't make plays and stuff. But like, if you're talking wide receiver 1, you're talking about a guy who is like a legit wide receiver 1, not like he's the best wide receiver on a team, because there are 32 technical wide receiver 1s, but there aren't 32 wide receiver 1s in the league.
Wide receiver 1 in title only.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so keeping that in mind, I'm certainly not afraid to bring somebody in that threatens the pecking order for Courtland Sutton. But that mindset of like, we could bring somebody else in, like, yeah, I think we have to. There's just too much talent out there. Devontae Adams, Keenan Allen. Say what you want about Amari Cooper.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, Godwin has the injury history. Brandon Cook has history with Peyton, and who knows?
Maybe Cooper Kupp as a release.
Cooper Kupp as a release, because I don't think they're going to get a trade done for him. Although I was skeptical about Debo actually being traded too. Who knows? All it takes is one.
Man, I'm glad we didn't trade for Debo.
I mean, and I hope Debo can find some resurgence.
I like him
2-3 years ago, but like,
that's a big risk.
Yeah. I mean, I made my claim. Devontae Adams, I said if he was released,
you did.
He would find his way to the Mile High City. I know they say West Coast, but Denver is just a short little plane ride away from kind of anywhere.
Just a hop, skip, and a jump.
Like, what's really the difference between living in say Denver or Seattle? If you're talking West Coast, you're still a plane ride away.
Couple feet.
So, I just think it's going to be good. And the SPO actually, it's dumb. What would you say the SPO has Devontae Adams deal?
1 year,
cheap.
17 million.
2 for 27.1.
Wow.
Yeah, sign me up for that, bro. Like, sign me up.
Yeah.
Or we could trade a day 2 pick for freaking DK Metcalf and pay him north of $30 million a year. Like,
Yeah, Matty actually said that if Devontae Adams signs with the Broncos, that he will actually give us the Matty truffle shuffle.
Fine,
Yeah.
I'll do it. But I'm doing it after I eat the Chick-fil-A that you'll owe me for our bet. So you'll see the spicy chicken sando slosh around a little bit.
Anybody that does not know, we did away with the Matty truffle shuffle, considering the fact that, well, there was no need to. We didn't want to break the curse of going to the playoffs.
It's actually because StreamYard told us that we're not allowed to be an OnlyFans.
Or a Bonely fans.
Bronley fans.
Yeah. Well, speaking of free agents, quick question I want to run by you, gents. Who's going to be our backup quarterback?
That was the next thing I was going to ask.
I think that the room stays put. Hot take.
Really? So we're going to re-sign both Jarrett Stidham and Zach Wilson.
I think so, probably for one more year. And then, depending on what happens, I think that the guys could go their separate ways. Especially knowing like where our offense is going to be, because you always need a backup. And I don't know what the difference is between Stidham and Zach Wilson, but I know this much. The entire room has chemistry.
Mm-hmm.
They all liked each other. They hang out with each other. Their
Families
wives hang out with each other.
Yeah.
They go to Cabo together. They hang out with the head coach in Cabo together. They hang out with other teams' head coaches in Cabo together. So like it's a weird room in the way that like the NFL is a professional situation. It's a business, and there can only be one quarterback on the field at a time. But I think this is a unique group of guys that are kind of bought into each other, and I feel like they probably would be willing to do this one more year. Certainly I would be floored if they were both gone, but
right.
I think they both will be back.
I can definitely see the case more for Jarrett Stidham returning and being that quarterback too. I have to wonder if Zach Wilson comes to Denver, gets to learn under Sean Payton a little bit for a year, gets to enjoy and experience an actually competent franchise, sees the Sam Darnold resurrection that occurs for 95% of the season, if you discard what happened at the end in Minnesota, and thinks, yeah, I want to go somewhere where I'm going to have a chance to play and compete for a potential starting job and resurrect my career a la Sam Darnold. Because Zach Wilson's only 25. So I'm not saying that I know that this is how he thinks, but I wouldn't be surprised if he sees that happen, and that's kind of what maybe goes through his mind. So he could maybe be hoping for somewhere where he could actually get some more playing time, or even have a chance to compete to be a starter. That's just the only thing with Zach Wilson that.
But here's my pushback on that.
Concerns me.
I agree. I think he probably uses Sam Darnold as a resource because one, they played with one another. I'm sure would venture to guess they know each other quite well. But you look at the landing spots, it's not ideal,
Going back to the Jets.
Yeah. You going back to the Jets, you're going to the Giants,
Raiders,
you're going to the Raiders, and I think
it wouldn't be terrible with Chip Kelly, Tom Brady.
But
I kind of hate that would happen, but
I think that, the best thing for me, the reason why I'm actually skeptical of Zach coming back probably more than Stidham is he will probably, be offered probably something of a backup job somewhere else. But the teams that are worrisome for me are actually some fascinating teams in the sense that, so you have what's going down with Matthew Stafford in the Rams. That's a team that I have kind of followed the way that, Sean McVay, is he going to take a bit of a flyer on this young 25-year-old Zach Wilson? You put him in that room, have him learn under Matt Stafford. That's a very interesting wrinkle that I would kind of throw out there as far as him being a backup into that room. And then, of course, the other one of there in that same neck of the woods and the San Francisco 49ers. Look, Kyle Shanahan is, it certainly seems like they might sign Brock Purdy, but he is arrogant enough. He is arrogant enough and he's shown that to do something outlandish. And I wouldn't be surprised if he brings him in at the backup spot. And, you have either, Zach Wilson, and, Brock Purdy in essence a room, or you even have, this is the other wild card that I have, where instead of instead of Zach Wilson, you have Kirk Cousins to San Francisco, and you have, that type of marriage. So I just think that like between the Rams and the 49ers, that's kind of like the different wrinkle that I have for Zach, where of all the teams from the backup side of things, I just seems very limited, except for those two interesting ones that I said.
So the Rams are really interesting to me for sure, because that could be like reclamation project for Sean McVay in the sense of like in the same kind of style of gunslinger like Matthew Stafford, who's
Baker Mayfield,
who's still kind of, young for an NFL quarterback, even though he's 37. That one is interesting for sure.
What I don't understand, so they were to go get Zach Wilson, and he gets to come in for a couple of games and he balls out, and then the following year Zach Wilson goes and moves on. That plays into the compensatory formula, right? For teams if the contract's big enough, right? And quarterback contracts tend to be on the bigger side. Like, I don't know why more teams don't go get a guy that has some upside who might be able to catch lightning in a bottle and move on the following year. Like, that sounds like a very 49er thing to do. So yeah, that definitely aligns. And that would be the exact I guess for the Rams too, if the situation arrives, but that would be the Sam Darnold track, right? Go to the 49ers and hang out there. And you know what? You could do worse than have a stop with Sean Payton and then
go to McVay,
one with Shanahan or McVay, and then move on. So,
but I will say, if push came to shove and they remade the room to what it is in the comments, I wouldn't rule out a Jameis Winston, because I think the one talking point that Kliss did mention about the backup room is that I think it sounded like ideally they would not mind having someone that's in the backup quarterback side who had played football last year. Well, there's a few quarterbacks that would kind of fit the bill there. One was in that division of the AFC West, who has arguably the best highlight video of anybody in the planet in Gardner Minshew. And then, of course, Jameis Winston. You put me on the fly in the wall with those Bible studies with Bo Nix and Jameis Winston. Whew. Yeah, that would be. I'd be all for it.
Either way, our defense would be licking its chops in practice because they both had pick sixes against us. So,
Jameis for pure vibes, man.
I mean, honestly, you could do worse.
For real.
Bring in Teddy Bridgewater.
What is better than eating dubs and club dub?
Yeah, that'd be great. Any other?
They would need to block off part of the post-game press conference just to give us 10 minutes of Jameis Winston at the podium for no reason. Even if he played no snaps, I don't even care.
And just to see the pump up videos, whenever they do the pumping up of the team, to get a chance to see that with Bo, would be pure magic at that point. So one position group, as we're kind of winding down here just a little bit, one position group we didn't get a chance to touch on is a safety position. I think if there was probably the position of where they probably get their big splash in air quotes, it's probably linebacker or safety. So Brandon and Matty, where are your guys' heads at in terms of that safety position, linebacker position? Because the safety free agency market is interesting, where they don't necessarily have to spend big, right?
I guess it depends on who they're trying to go after. If they're wanting to go after someone like Javon Holland, then then they would need to spend big.
15 a year.
Or maybe combine them. And Justin Reed.
Trayvon Moehrig.
Yeah.
He's not talked about at all.
No. I don't know. I don't know like how they view what they want to do with that room.
Because it seems like
primarily like I feel like PJ Locke is just he has shown that he is probably not the guy to be your starter as your safety. But I don't know who they would potentially want to try to replace him there. Like, are they going to? I mean, honestly, the biggest one to me is Justin Simmons, but like, I just don't think that's unfortunately going to happen.
Nope.
But that would be a fantastic connection that I don't think would cost you too much. But like, you look at someone like Javon Holland is going to be like kind of the next man up in terms of, good safeties available. That I think is going to be unfortunately pretty expensive though. Maybe like Cameron Bynum.
Yep.
Or 17.
Yeah. I mean, that's going to be.
We're starting to.
It's going to be up there. I was going to say in the Moehrig tier, we have comments back to back of Andre Siskow from the Jacksonville Jaguars. It's kind of interesting. You take a flyer on Jeremy Chin. I don't know.
10.8.
You also have Talanoa Hufanga. I mean, both of you guys know that I've been really high on Hufanga.
Hufanga's 11.8, I think.
He'd be
per year.
He would be incredible just based on the VJ aggressiveness that they play with on defense. Speaking of vibes, Bynum would be incredible, not just from his play style, but obviously the choreographed dances after, turnovers would be incredible.
That'd be fun. Yeah, I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see like what they decide to try to do in that room.
Justin Reed.
I wouldn't be surprised if we go after that in free agency, just because I don't really know. I mean, it's not that there's no safeties available in this draft class, but I just don't think they're as good.
Well, and I think my other question too is we are looking at this from the side of his like the final last position group that we should probably touch on. I'm curious to see what the running back market is going to be looking like. You know what I mean? Like I am curious to see in the sense of like, and when I'm saying running back market, I'm talking like the two or three big heads, which is like the Nick Chubbs and the Aaron Jones and the Najee Harris market, right? Like I'm talking about like that market. So like, because specifically, like it's been said and it's well documented that the free agency running back class is not great at all. And the running back draft class that we touched on at the very top of this is as loaded as the defensive tackle class. Like there is a lot of choices to choose from. So do a lot of these teams, Broncos included, just go a full-on month and beyond, not even address the running back position, and they look at it and not sign Aaron Jones, not sign Najee Harris, not sign Nick Chubb, and go out and just double dip, which is probably what they should do. But I'm very curious to see how aggressive they attack that running back market in free agency, because I wouldn't rule out some of these fits like an Aaron Jones and a Najee Harris, but it's just the preference would be to go to the draft on those guys.
Nick
yeah,
Chubb.
I mean, Aaron Jones is the only guy available that I have any interest at all in, but I just can't. Again, I can't see paying someone $5 million. Maybe even if it's a 1 year, $5 million deal. Let's just say that's the deal.
Would you do Aaron Jones for 2 for 14?
No, because like again, I can go into this draft, throw a dart at the board in round 4, and probably come away with a guy who could be a starter.
I'm not disagreeing. I just think the 2 for 14 isn't that terrible.
I would give him a 1 year deal. I don't know if he'd sign a 1 year deal, but I'd give him maybe like a 1 year deal.
Maybe like a 1+1 type of situation where you have an out,
option.
or
Yeah.
Very, very little guaranteed
it's like,
money to him the next year.
Sure. Maybe it's a 2-year deal on paper that's really more of a 1-year deal, and the last year is just kind of like a void year, fake year.
So 3.3 for Chubb, 5.6 for Aaron Jones, 9.2 for Najee Harris.
That's
according
ridiculous.
to the SPO annual
Keep
value.
that shit away from me.
But let's look at Javonte here, just for reference. 6.9.
There's no way.
There is no way.
I do not know how he gets to
Press
that
X
number.
to doubt.
But I want us to get a guy. I want us to get a free agent, and I want us to get a rookie to add to that room. I think Aaron Jones at $6 million, line me up for that. That's fine. 2 for 12 with like maybe make this year fully guaranteed and maybe a small something next year, just to kind of give him a little bit of extra security.
Yeah,
like, fine. Like let's do
I
it.
wouldn't hate that, but
And then if he balls out, then like obviously we could keep him next year. He looked good last year. He looked actually good last year. So I know he's 30. I get it. I understand, but it's not a huge investment. And honestly, I would prefer to have a guy that we can rely on for 3 downs come in that's not going to be necessarily a tell, because he can play in the pass game, protecting or receiving.
he had 51 catches last year.
And then you work in a rookie, and if we got to do it for a couple of years to keep some tread off of the rookie, like why not? You know,
Well,
the room needs to be remade anyway. We have the capacity for two backs.
I mean, I wouldn't put it past, Sean Payton to truly kind of remake the room a little bit, and I wouldn't put him past being aggressive enough where he goes out and gets an Aaron Jones or a Najee Harris. And then you still have, I mean, he did it with Mark Ingram, Pierre Thomas, and who was the other one? Kamara.
Yeah.
Like, he had 3 capable backs, So I wouldn't be the least bit surprised if that's kind of like, and meaning like Estime is in that conversation, but you have like, you have players like, an Aaron Jones in there, but you also have like the Amari and Hampton of that, right? Or you have the Caleb Johnson, right? Or you have a Quinshon Junkins, or you have the Travion Hendersons, of that. So I mean, like there's a conversation to be had where you put a rather unique room where they're all 3 capable bodies and good bodies, where they're all sharing a good enough workload where the tread on the tires is not damaged at all. So that's kind of a tempting room when all is said and done. It's not. It's kind of the weird case of like the running backs matter to Sean Payton, but it's what matters is the room and how good that room is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, just based on the Joker comments alone, I do expect them to at least look at Aaron Jones.
Yeah, which sounds like, I don't know if you're in, I know you were in Mexico, but it sounds like, according to one of the Minnesota guys, Darren Wolfson or something, it sounds like there's been something brewing with the Denver Broncos and the Minnesota Vikings running back. So, yeah.
I mean, it's such a, for us, it's such an important position to address, because by a lot of running metrics, like, and I stand corrected on some of this, I was overly harsh on the offensive line for our rushing production. Our running backs were in fact that bad. Yep. And like, where else are we on? Let's just look at this objectively here. $6 million. Let's pencil him in for $6 million. Hell, let's do 6.5. Where else on our entire team can we invest $6.5 million and get a larger impact than bringing in Aaron Jones?
Yeah, and I think that's why the Saquon Barkley contract if there's anything of like the takeaway, and it's more necessarily looking at it from like one player perspective, but it's just like you look at it from the perspective of the position. There is no position outside of quarterback that has touched the ball the most than running back on offense. Not wide receiver. Like running back is the one position outside of quarterback that touches the ball the most. And so if you do have, the player or players that are capable of taking your offense to the very next level, like specifically this football team, right, where they've been in dire need, for, I mean, like it is, yeah, they need a massive upgrade to that running back room, regardless if, Blake Watson showed in like one game or 2 games or whatever, and Estime was, okay for a game or 2, right? Tyler Bidet, like they need some upgrades. And so I think that they do get it. And the question is going to be, is it in both free agency and the draft? So as we go, and there is free agency next week, let's do a round table. And for anybody that is in the chat, please drop it in. And I know, Jack, you're in here. You're a Raiders fan. So I hate to put you on the spot and make you make the prediction for who the Broncos are going to be getting in free agency. But let's go around the room. The Denver Broncos will sign. Matty, we'll start with you.
First or just in general?
Call your shot on one free agent.
Well, damn, I've got 2, but I'll stick with Poona Ford.
Okay.
Poona Ford was going to be mine.
I mean, it's I've been pretty firm in that stance for a bit, but fine.
No. You can take him. No, you take him. It's totally fine. I was giving you shit. Take him.
Okay.
Oh. Justice mentions a player who actually has ties to Joe Lombardi, and actually was just briefly mentioned
Joshua Palmer.
In the DK Metcalf video, in terms of he might actually have a better market than people realize, and that would be Palmer.
I'm not going to lie. I'd be highly underwhelmed. That'd be the Reynolds situation over again, but I guess I could see it. Certainly would be affordable.
No, maybe. He said he might actually have a really good market, meaning Ian Rappaport. So that's curious. So Matty's giving you Poona Ford, Brandon.
No. He can keep Poona Ford. I mean, I already said it's going to be Jamie. I already said it's going to be Jamie Sherwood. Like that's definitely going to be who we sign, in my opinion. That one's kind of a little bit of a gimme.
So then why don't we go offense, defense, that sort of thing?
I guess I could stick with Jamie and Sherwood there from the defensive perspective. On offense, just kind of given what we heard from Kliss about kind of that wide receiver 2.5 sort of role.
Mm-hmm.
I guess it depends on like how much are they wanting to actually give a player like that.
Yeah.
And what are they maybe looking to get out of that role?
It is an interesting
someone
comment.
like a DJ Chark wouldn't be that surprising to me. I don't know if he's going to really fit well into that like 2.5 role. But he would be someone that wouldn't be too overly expensive. Elijah Moore is a free agent. I don't think he'd really want to go for something like that, though. He probably wants to be the dude.
It goes to
maybe like a Nick Westbrook Kine. That would be an interesting name.
Mr. 15 catches, 11 touchdowns.
Exactly. I mean, 1 for 1, man. That's all it takes. I'm gonna piss Cam off. I'm gonna take his guy. I'm gonna say Darius Slayton.
Oh, you're saying Darius Slayton.
So, do you know what the SPO has him at right now per year?
Darius Slayton? I didn't know.
I am curious. What?
15.8 per year. 3 years, 47.3 million.
You said 14.8?
15.
That's actually not that bad.
It could be worse. But
for Darius and Mother effing Slayton.
I mean, dude, wide receiver contracts are stupid right now.
He all right, but he ain't that.
But you almost have to have a deal like that if you're going to be maybe.
Okay, you want to pay 15.8 to Slayton or 13.6 to Devontae Adams?
I'm probably going Slayton, actually.
Oh, you are high. You are high as hell. You're going to give $2 more million to Slayton?
I would take Devontae Adams in that case. But he is 32. He is
Brandon,
32.
Get your guy, bro.
I would take Devontae.
So I will say I'm not going to be choosing the biggest elephant in the room on the offensive side of the ball, which from the tight end side of things, it certainly seems like that's going to be happening, and that is Juwan Johnson. I'm not choosing Juwan Johnson because that seems like way too, in election terms, way too close, or it's too close to call, right? Is that the phrase? Like it's too close to call?
Well, if you think the dots are connected, then that's like calling it with like only 2% of the vote in.
Yeah.
Like
so that
you already know.
So it'd be one of those. No, but I'm not going to go Juwan Johnson. On the defensive side of the ball, I actually will go. I will maybe go a bit of this route, and I will say Talanoa Hufanga.
Ooh,
I'm saying Hufanga. And on the offensive side of the ball, I will say offensive side of the ball. I will go from the wide receiver 2. And I will say, you know what? I will go with Amari Cooper.
Okay.
I'll go with Amari Cooper. Just kind of shot in the dark, throwing it out there.
That's an interesting fit.
Yeah.
Forgot he was a free agent.
For my brand and what I've been saying, and hey, K. Adams, Devontae Adams is going to be. He's going to be putting a Taco Bell inside of a house, and he won't be called Casa Bonita. So,
there's already a Casa Bonito at home.
So, we'll be getting him there, going from the Raiders torching us, and now we're gonna enjoy his talents. I see it 2-year deal, maybe 2+1. That's like a fake one or something, but yeah, I'm sticking with it.
As far as this particular comment, I mentioned I'm just convinced they're going to be getting Juwan Johnson. That's kind of like what I'm convinced at this point. I think if you were to ask personal preference, I would rather ship off a draft pick and go get Mark Andrews. It's my personal opinion. Make Matty even more happy, going out and getting another Boomer Sooner.
Mark Andrews, ooh, say it again. Mark Andrews, ooh. Yeah, give me all that.
But I just
Robert Spillane is an interesting name from the Raiders at the linebacker.
Divine Diablo, Robert Spillane, they're not talked about a whole lot at all.
No. Robert Spillane's pretty good. I wouldn't be mad at us grabbing him to the chagrin of Jack.
Yeah. Want to thank everybody for hopping in the chat. Another lively discussion over here on the Manely Broncos podcast. Next week is NFL free agency, and we are probably we might do something special for you next week in the sense we might be doing a show on Friday with a certain guest and co-host of the Locked On Broncos podcast. So we might be doing a bit of a special show for you there in terms of recapping the free agency moves, but I think it's almost fitting we do a normal show on Wednesday because it is going to be such a fun-filled and packed week. So expect us to do one on Wednesday, and you'll see us with another person that will be a part of the Manely Broncos podcast. As we said earlier, Jordan Lopez has officially joined the Manely Broncos podcast. So next week, that is the plan. On his debut for the podcast. So it's going to be an exciting time for us on the network and this particular podcast. So I think it's going to be an exciting time. Thank you guys to everybody that hopped in the chat. Make sure you hit that subscribe button for MHRT Network. Follow all of us there on the social media platforms, if you will, of X, Twitter. You can follow Matty at Matty Mulls Pod. You can follow Brandon at Brandon Miller PO, myself at Cameron Parker PO. You can follow the new one, the young buck now of the group, Jordan Lopez at Jordan T Lopez on Twitter. You can follow the show handle at Manly Broncos. Again, thank you guys so much for hopping in the chat. And as always, do not forget.
Let's go Broncos! God bless Bo Nix!
Fast lane when I pass in the street, bag of money in the passenger seat. Tempo's been asking for me on the road from the west to the east. Way up, I might never come down, cause the coast's racking up the flame out. So high, I might never come down, so what?